I have a photo of me that used to make me feel worthless. I was 13 years old and I was contestant number one in a local beauty pageant in New York. And in the picture, I'm standing under a yellow and white striped tent and I am stiff as a board. I remember picking out that purple polyester dress for this and trying to blow out my hair to kind of straighten it. And so I didn't win. I didn't win. And for years, I thought that that was a referendum on me, that I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't confident enough, like I was missing some ingredient that every other person seemed to have. But what I didn't know back then about my family, about myself, what I know now, it changed everything. When I was a kid, I wanted so badly to be seen. And not just seen, but chosen. Like, who wants to be the last one picked for kickball, right? And that's what a pageant is, really. It's a public moment of someone saying, you're it. But that day when my number wasn't called, I felt really small. And I felt like I had failed at something that I didn't even quite understand. And I carried that feeling with me for years, not really realizing how deeply it ran. Because what I wasn't really chasing a trophy. I was chasing validation of some kind. Validation not just from strangers, but from a culture that constantly teaches us that we have to be more polished, more graceful, more likable, more confident, especially as a young girl. But I think everyone's felt that in some way. Like you're standing on a stage that you didn't even sign up for, being measured by rules that no one's actually ever explained to you. And what I didn't realize was that I felt that way in part because I had no context for who I was. I didn't know much about my family history. There were a lot of gaps. I hadn't been told the stories about my great grandmother Lola, who was born in Louisiana, what it meant for her to marry uh, a white Irish man in the 1920s in Louisiana when mixed race marriages were illegal. I still haven't found their wedding license, by the way. And she's standing there, in their wedding picture that I eventually found, standing beside a man who didn't look anything like her in a world where that union came with consequences. And she wasn't living for recognition, she was living for survival, for love. Back then, I thought my problem was not being pretty enough. The deeper issue was disconnection. I didn't know who I came from. And when you don't have a sense of origin, you're looking for belonging in all the wrong places, on stages, in mirrors, in other people's eyes. And this isn't just about girls and beauty pageants. This is about anyone who's ever been made to feel small or like they don't measure up. Maybe it was a version of yourself that you were always trying to reach. We've all been contestant number one, the loser, on the stage at some point, right? But the stage just takes different forms. But what happened next, what I found in my family's past, reframed everything I believed about myself. So it took years, but the turning point came when I started really learning my family's story, the real story. I got curious. I followed names, documents. I asked questions. I sat and do sit still with some uncomfortable truths, contradictions. But what I found changed me. Because suddenly that feeling of not being enough started to fall apart. I realized that I wasn't just standing on the stage by myself. I was standing on the shoulders of people who had survived things I never had to face. People who weren't looking for crowns. They were just trying to stay alive, protect their children, to hold on to love in impossible circumstances. My great grandmother Lola, I love her in her wedding picture. Her quiet resolve, her decision to marry the man that she loves. That's the kind of beauty that we aren't really taught to value. But it lives in me now. Because the more I understood my family story, my great grandmother's story, the more I could see my own worth, not as something to be earned, but it's inherited. Not as something that others give you, but something you carry. Now, when I look at that photo of myself, I don't feel embarrassed anymore. I laugh about it. I feel compassion, though, because I see a kid who hadn't learned her story yet, who she was. I see someone trying her best, without the armor of history. We need the armor of our family history. People have had that for generations, and it's like we're one of the first generations that we don't have it at all. And I think you can see the effects of that. Without that shield that comes from knowing deeply who you belong to, who you come from. And that changes everything when you know your story. You stop asking for permission to exist. You stop waiting to be chosen because you start showing up like you belong because you do. Maybe there's a picture of yourself that gives you that same uncomfortable embarrassment that I felt that you can see in the picture of me in the yellow tent. Maybe there's a memory that you've buried because it felt like a failure. But what if the version of you that feels the most insecure was simply the version that hadn't heard the full story yet? Because sometimes I think the shame that we carry is just confusion in disguise. We think we're the problem when really we're unfinished. We're still forming, we're still growing and moving into the people that we are supposed to become. I lost that pageant brutally, but I've found the people I come from. And that gave me something a crown never could. It gave me myself. And once you find that, you really find that you don't need to win anything. You just need to remember. Because when you know where you come from, you walk differently. It is so true. Maybe I'm just my personality. Like I'm a crier. Like I'm very emotional. And so maybe this isn't going to resonate with all the personalities out there. But I think one of the things we're really lacking in our culture, in our modern experience, and I'm speaking as an American, we just don't know where we come from. It's like people think they just showed up ex nihilo, out of nothing. You're just here. And that's, nothing could be further from the truth. And I think that sense of community and finding the extended family, finding out the big history that surrounds your family is such an incredible gift. And I hope it's a gift that you will give yourself. And if you are interested in working on your family story and you don't know where to start, I have a bunch of free downloads I made for you for this purpose, because I want you to do it. So go to NYTNashville.com. There's like maybe 3 or 4 free downloads. Just grab them. And if you'd like to connect off of YouTube, I would love to do that. You can join me at patreon.com/NYTN. Otherwise, we'll talk soon.
Over the last 2 years, I've been telling the stories that often get ignored. But lately, I've been facing an uphill battle behind the scenes of each video. My videos are getting flagged by YouTube when all I'm doing is sharing real history. If these stories have ever resonated with you or given you a new perspective, grab some Be a Good Ancestor merch and help me keep this channel going. Check out nytonashville.com.